You're connected to Business Wrap. Find us online at businesswrap.biz, on Twitter using handle AskBizWrap, and on Facebook just search Business Wrap. And now, Michigan Reimagined with Chris Buck.
So every so often I enjoy highlighting a specific local business who's achieving remarkable results. So today we're going to learn more about Orthopaedic Rehab Specialists, a mid-Michigan physical therapy firm providing a wide variety of services. And here to discuss the success ORS has had is the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Kevin Barclay. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I've really enjoyed watching your trajectory, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with the audience. So thanks for joining me here today. So, but before we get into all of the growth, let's talk a little bit about Orthopaedic Rehab Specialists. So what types of services does your firm offer?
Primarily, we're a physical therapy company. We also provide athletic training services to 10 schools throughout mid-Michigan. We also have a performance center for athletic performance, and we also offer massage therapy.
All right. So how did ORS begin? What was the vision that kind of set the wheels in motion, and where did that happen?
Well, ironically, you used the word vision, and I think it was the squelching of a vision that led to our company, because our two founders, Richard Kohler and Jerry Malone, physical therapists, were working in a hospital setting down in Jackson. They had a lot of really good ideas. They would present them and how they can get more involved with the community and build the programs that the hospital could provide through the physical therapy and sports medicine department. And it seemed like it get caught in committees and red tape and everything else. They never could get what they wanted out of it. So eventually they were approached by some doctors and said, we send our patients to you, not necessarily to the hospital. If you guys went on your own and did what you wanted to do, we would support you. So those guys came out and said, we want to have fun, we want to have good outcomes, and we want to provide an environment where people want to work. And so that's what they started doing back in 1987 is when it started.
Wow, okay. And that spins right into my next question. I was looking at your website and doing a little bit of research for this interview, and right there, smack in the middle, it says transforming lives and giving hope.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking, I mean, I understand that, a physical therapy is getting people kind of back in action, so I get the transforming lives, giving hope, I guess, a little bit, but it seems like a really impactful phrase that clearly means a lot to your firm. Can you share a little bit more about what that means to you?
Yeah, we developed that as more of our internal marketing statement, something that our employees could understand exactly what we're trying to do. We know we can treat injuries and we can make them better, but we really need to understand our ability to connect. I mean, we spend so much time with the patients, and there's so many things that come to us, their own family problems, their emotional response to their physical injury. And so we know that we can actually transform kind of the feelings, both their emotion, their thoughts, and as well as their physical, by working with them. And the giving hope, the hope is actually an acronym that to help remind us that we want to be helpful. We want to make sure we stay optimistic. We want to keep a positive environment. And then, E would be environment, provide, or experience. I'm sorry. I'm getting confused at our own place.
That's okay.
So the experience that the patient has has just got to be beyond anything that they could have in any other physical therapy.
Okay. All right. I can get behind that. So now the locations. How do you decide where you're going to be? How did your expansion process start? So you talked about Jackson in 1987. We're recording this up here in Lansing, and I've seen ribbon cuttings, and I've followed you on social media, and it just seems like you're really in growth mode. So talk to me a little bit about the decision-making on growth.
Well, it's been interesting because the first 16 years of the company, we had one clinic. And that's just kind of how it started. We actually moved to a bigger facility, but we still had one clinic. And all of our original growth really came about through requests. I mean, we had people that said, would you be interested in putting one on this side of town? We have a clinic down in Jonesville. That one came about because the high school wanted us to provide athletic training, and there was no physical therapy at the time. Our first expansion actually up into Ingham County was we were looking in the Mason area because one of our directors, who's now one of my partners, was from this area. We said, well, maybe we can look to branch out in that area a little bit. And it was the doctors. There's two different doctors groups that said, we have no physical therapy in Holt. Why don't you look into Holt? They have a big high school. So we listened to them and opened up a clinic in Holt. When we opened our aquatic center, we were told by doctors there's no aquatic therapy in Jackson. We would send people to Lansing, we send them to Battle Creek, we send them to Ann Arbor. So would you guys consider putting in an aquatic therapy center? So a lot of that early growth was, hey, we need a service. Will you guys please provide it? Which we appreciated because they wanted our services. They knew the quality of our services and if we could expand that. But once that happened, having a wider base of community support, wider base of medical professionals to connect with was huge because that allowed us to have a little more stability, a little further growth again as a company. So then we started looking at opportunities where we could kind of overlap where we were but serve other communities. And that's what's led to, like I said, we had one clinic in the first 16 years. We're about to open, we signed on to open our 10th. And the last 4 years, we've added 4. So it's just kind of been, where can we continue offering the services, provide stability, expand out a little bit more. And so now we're going to have 4 in Ingham County, which, by the way, we just got the People's Choice Award for the best physical therapy in Ingham County.
Hey, okay. Congratulations. I hadn't heard that. So I'm surprised that there aren't other physical therapists that you wouldn't be faced with strong competitors wherever you go.
Well, they're definitely strong competitors wherever we go.
Okay. But people are still asking. I mean, you paint the picture that people are saying, hey, we need you up here in this town, or there really isn't anyone providing this type of service. I guess to their satisfaction is probably the unspoken finish of that sentence. So what is it that makes you so much different than the other folks that are out there doing this work?
Well, I think there's 2 major things. One is the service itself. So we provide many different services, even within the scope of physical therapy. We allow our young staff to develop interests and treatments that we never really did before. We do things like dry needling and blood flow restriction therapy and acoustic compressive therapy and things that I just never even thought much more about, but we had young therapists that wanted to do it. Dry needling. Did I say dry needling? Because that's an important one that we've been doing lately. We also offer women's health and vestibular. So we don't have, this is our box. You can fit into our box or you can leave. We have, this is our family. Come on in, bring in your special attributes and your interests, and we'll continue to grow with that. And I think the number one thing is the vast things that we can do that maybe traditional therapy didn't help as much, but if you add one of these specialty services that we can provide, that's one. But I think the number one, the resource that we use for growth is our people. We just have incredible people, and we have really, really good attrition. I mean, I have a therapist that just celebrated 30 years of work. I'm going to be 30 years next year. We have multiple therapists that started us with new grads and are now 11 or 12 years into it, and our clinical directors. If there's anything negative about adding new therapists at this point, it's bringing down the average length of stay with us. But other than that, it's been great because people stick around and they can mentor the new young therapists. And that's the other thing with expansion is providing leadership opportunities for the young therapists. And I think that's one thing that the growth that we've had in adding therapists is their knowledge that if they stay with us and they can work on their own developing as a clinician first, then they can join our leadership development program, which we have, and then they can go into our clinical internship program if they want to learn how to become a clinical director and manage, and then the expansion allows us to have opportunities for them as well. So I think it's a combination of the services, but definitely our people that have made a huge difference.
It usually does, right? I mean, that's a common answer when asking anyone who's successful. But the unemployment pre-pandemic was historically low. So usually people that I interview talk about how their growth is stymied by their inability to find talent. But it doesn't sound like that's a problem for you. How have you been able to attract talent? Are there that many people coming through school? Is this a budding, discipline that's popular in say college or post high school?
Yeah, this profession is a very high demand profession. So there's actually, I don't know if I want to say there's a shortage, but to try to find a very good qualified young physical therapist interested in outpatient physical therapy, they have many, many options. So, and I think the biggest thing that's been able to help us gain new, young, aggressive, therapists that fit our family style has been some of the things we have to offer. I mean, we try to really have a very comprehensive educational package and benefit package, plus the services that we have to offer that they want to learn, that they know they have the freedom to come up with something else that they really want to invest their own time in and maybe specialize, plus the development into leadership and management if that's something that they choose. So we've been able to really find some very good people in the last few years to add to our already great staff, just simply because of what we offer to young therapists coming in.
Do you ever take people that are already in the industry running their own practice and kind of fold them into your family as you expand into new towns, or is that usually not the direction you go?
That's very interesting that you asked that question, because the next clinic that we're signing on to do would be in that West Lansing area. But we are actually talking to someone in another location that is an exiting single practice. She's older and would like to transition, and she has no transition plans. So this would be the first time that we would kind of come in and help assimilate into that situation and help her exit and then have a location. But usually this is a location where either we're providing athletic training or doctors feel that they're underserved with quality physical therapy, and so we'll kind of start a new one. But yeah, it's going to be interesting trying to go in. And you're right about this time. It's tough to, I don't know, you're coming out of this wondering what your next steps are for your company and if there's another setback. And there are a lot of practices that have closed, and there's a lot of practices looking for help. And we've had more experienced physical therapists apply for jobs now because they were let go at their previous locations. So, in fact, one of the therapists that we just recently hired is someone who does have about 10 years of experience. And just as she was hired on doing a new job, they said, well, we have to furlough you because we have to close back down.
Right.
So, but we're open to experienced therapists or young, aggressive, excited therapists. So,
okay. So how has the pandemic affected your business?
Well, there was a great effect. So, and this is part of the expansion and the stability, is that we had 8 clinics at the time operating. We wound up closing 4 of them totally. We had to do mass furloughs. We did have a significant number of physical therapists that continued working. Some worked from home doing telehealth, and we still offer that option. But that was a really struggle because of the family group that we have, and we had to tell some of them we couldn't bring them on right now. And so we had a big drop off, as you can imagine, in business. We've done everything that we need to and should do as far as protection as we bring people back. And so right now, I tell people we have 105% now of our physical therapists back, because all of our therapists are back, plus we've added 2 more, which is great. We have 99% of our physical therapy assistants back, and most of our staff is back, and we're starting to climb out of this steadily. So it's been good, but it was a scary time. It was a hard time because when you're just not able to provide something for your group, it's hurtful.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's a saying that it often takes 10 years to become an overnight success. So what kinds of setbacks did you face as you got started and got stable, or advice that you might have for listeners who are maybe not in your discipline, but, talking about trying to get their own business up and running?
I would say, they had a really good start. Richard and Jerry, their business bloomed really, really quickly. But I think if there's 2 things we probably would have liked to, in our leadership group, we shared, the Jim Collins, Good to Great.
Yes.
And if we would have read that and really focused on the hedgehog concept, that would have been good, because we tried to go out and run a facility where you rent court space and do that. We had our performance center in there, and we were just trying to run it operationally, and it was just out of our hedgehog, and it was not we did it for a couple of years, and then we couldn't do that anymore. So stay within what you do.
Okay.
And
Makes sense.
And be as good as you can. And I think our number one thing that we ever got in trouble with was hiring people to fill positions. And I think we've learned, we have a really extensive hiring process, and our orientation and onboarding is different. But I think you really can't go out and fill positions. You have to actually go look for family members.
Yep.
You got to find people that are going to fit your culture. And that's another thing, is that we started actually doing core value training on paper, really explaining it in orientation in that. In fact, I was listening to a leadership book on the way up, and they mentioned only 10% of companies have a written core values that they run through with their staff and train and have expectations. And a year ago, we would have been one of those companies, but now we have a core value training we do. So I think hiring people that fit your culture is huge.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. In the few minutes that we've got left here, I'd like to hear more about how our listeners can get in touch with Orthopedic Rehab Specialists. Is there a website, social media platforms? Where will we find you?
Yeah, well, we're on all the social media platforms, and Mark Stiles, our marketing director, would be so mad at me for not being able to throw that all out. But our website is orsmi.com, and all the access to our social media, we're on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, that would be the best place to get a hold of all our information.
And you said pretty much all of Lansing, Jackson, and radiating kind of a little bit east, west, south of that. Is that correct?
Right, with Lansing, Jackson being our major areas, yep.
Fantastic. We've been speaking to the Chief Executive Officer, Kevin Barclay from ORS, Orthopedic Rehab Specialists. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.